The Beaumont Gallery had been my family's social headquarters for as long as I could remember. Minimalist white walls, towering abstract paintings, polished concrete floors where priceless sculptures cast long, distorted shadows, and a hushed reverence where deals worth millions were brokered over polite sips of champagne. I'd grown up in its shadow in a way, attending galas, private viewings, and artist dinners, always as the overlooked younger daughter, the one who didn't quite fit the family's perfect portrait. My brother, Julian, 33, was everything our parents valued. He materialized from the crowd, his face a mask of cold fury. He stopped directly in front of me, his first words cutting through the air like shards of glass. "You cannot be here dressed like that." His eyes, the same shade of cool gray as our father's, scanned my work-worn jeans and simple jacket, lingering with theatrical disgust on a faint grease smudge near my cuff. The accusation was loud, designed to be overheard by the nearby patrons, who were now turning their heads, their quiet conversations faltering. The familiar heat of shame rose in my cheeks, a conditioned response I'd been fighting for years. It was the same tone he'd used when I was 12 and tracked mud on the Persian rug, a tone that didn't just scold, but sought to erase. I kept my voice low, refusing to participate in his performance. "You called me. Julian, you said it was an emergency." "This times is times the emergency," he hissed, his jaw tight. I made a vague, sweeping gesture that encompassed the whole gallery, the towering paintings, the severe bronze statues, the clusters of collectors in their tailored suits and silk dresses. "Look around. Fiona, this is the most important night in the gallery's history. We are finalizing the Dubois deal. This is about legacy, about reputation. It's about money, things you have never, ever understood." I didn't flinch. I just stood my ground. "I understand perfectly. You needed me. So you called. I came. That's all. The story ends with you leaving," he snapped. Just then, a wave of expensive perfume announced our mother's arrival. Eleanor Beaumont glided to a stop beside Julian. Her smile, a brittle, painted-on thing that never reached her eyes. She took in my appearance, and the smile tightened into a bloodless line. "We are about to secure our family's legacy. Fiona," she said, her voice a low, cultured murmur that carried more venom than Julian's shouting. "I cannot have you smudging the canvas with engine grease." Her gaze flickered to the smudge on my sleeve, and a few onlookers tittered politely behind their hands. The circle of humiliation was complete when my father, Richard, joined them. He was the patriarch, the final word. His presence, sucking the remaining warmth from the air. He didn't even look at me, but addressed the room as if delivering a verdict. "This deal with Mr. Flashen Dubois solidifies this gallery's reputation for a generation," he announced, his voice booming with authority. "Your presence," he finally turned his cold eyes on me, "is a liability we cannot afford." The three of them stood there, a united wall of disappointment, their perfectly coiffed heads and expensive clothes forming a barrier between me and the world they inhabited. They were a portrait of success, and I was the ugly charcoal sketch they wanted to burn. "I'm part of this family," I stated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. It was a simple fact, but in their world, facts were negotiable. My mother let out a soft, pitying laugh. "Not tonight, you're not," she said, the cruelty in her voice so pure, it was almost beautiful. "Tonight, you are a problem to be solved." Julian's composure was cracking. I could see it in the frantic way. His eyes darted from me to a distinguished, white-haired man. "Across the room, Mr. Dubois." The collector. He saw Dubois looking over, a slight frown creasing his brow at the commotion. Panic set in. Cornered animals always get vicious. "That's it," Julian declared, his voice rising again. You're trespassing. You're causing a scene. And I want you gone. I spun around, flagging down the nearest staff member. Get the gallery manager. Now. Or call security. I want her removed. The staffer, a young woman in a black uniform, looked flustered and immediately spoke into her earpiece. A moment later, a woman detached herself from the edge of the crowd and walked toward us. Isabelle was the gallery manager. A woman so impeccably dressed and composed, she made my family look like emotional amateurs. Her expression was utterly unreadable. She approached our tense little circle and addressed my brother with polite, detached professionalism. Mr. Beaumont, you wished to see me. Julian puffed out his chest, reasserting his authority. Yes. Isabelle, my sister has shown up uninvited and is refusing to leave. She's creating a disturbance during a private event. She needs to be escorted from the premises. Isabelle listened to his entire tirade without interruption, her gaze calm and steady. The patrons nearby had fallen completely silent. Their champagne flutes held motionless as they watched the drama unfold. The air grew thick with anticipation. Then, Isabelle turned her gaze slowly from Julian, past my parents, and settled on me. She held it for a beat too long. An eternity in which the only sound was the distant hum of the climate control system. The silence was absolute, a vacuum, waiting for her judgment. Finally, she turned back to Julian. Her voice was clear and carried easily in the quiet room. Mr. Beaumont, your sister has requested my intervention. The line was deliberately ambiguous, and it landed with the force of a physical blow. Julian and my parents stared, their faces a canvas of confusion. My sister Julian stammered, his carefully constructed fury collapsing into bewilderment. What are you talking about? She didn't request anything. I did, the crowd murmured, sensing the power dynamic had just shifted in a way no one understood. Before Isabelle could clarify, the esteemed collector, Mr. Dubois, stepped forward, a warm, genuine smile on his face. He walked right past my family, his eyes fixed on me. Fiona, it is wonderful to see you, he said, his voice rich with a French accent. He took my hand, the one without the grease smudge, and raised it for a polite kiss. I was hoping you would be here tonight. My family froze, their mouths slightly agape. Dubois continued, speaking to me, but projecting for the benefit of the rapt audience. The masterpiece you built for me, my God. It is magnificent. He turned to the crowd. Some of you collect paintings. Some of you collect sculptures. I collect engines. And Fiona here? He squeezed my hand. Is the Rembrandt of the V12. He waved a dismissive hand at a massive, abstract painting on the wall behind him. This is static work. Her art times breathes, fire asterisk. My brother looked like he was going to be sick. Dubois then turned a cold, appraising eye on Julian. Your sister is a genius. Young man, you sent me the invitation. Told me the owner would be here for the final sale. I had no idea you meant the most talented artist in the room. The words hung in the chilled air, each one a death knell for my family's arrogance. As they reeled from Dubois' public endorsement, Isabelle delivered the final, clinical blow. Mr. Dubois is correct, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. Mr. Beaumont. Mrs. Beaumont, allow me to properly introduce you to Fiona Beaumont, the sole proprietor of the Beaumont Gallery and its parent holding company. Isabelle produced a tablet from under her arm, tapping the screen to display a series of official-looking documents. She held it out for my father to see. He stared at the screen, at the corporate charters and deeds of sale, his face draining of all color. I could see my name, clear as day, on the ownership line. There were audible gasps from the crowd. Julian stammered, his voice cracking. No, that's not possible. The family trust. The inheritance. Isabel's expression remained placid. Her professionalism, a weapon. The gallery was on the verge of bankruptcy. Mr. Beaumont. It was sold 6 months ago to a private investor to cover $14 million in outstanding debts incurred by your father's mismanagement. That investor? She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. Was your sister? That was the justification. Now came the twist. In fact, Isabelle continued, her voice dropping to an even more precise, damning tone. The district attorney's office may also be interested in some of the financial irregularities we uncovered during the acquisition. It seems several of the gallery's most valuable pieces were used as collateral for multiple overlapping loans from different institutions, a practice some might call fraud. My father, who had merely been pale before, now looked like a ghost. He swayed, and my mother gasped, grabbing his arm. The murmurs in the crowd went from shocked to scandalized. The word fraud hung in the air, a stink bomb in their perfumed world. This wasn't just about bad business anymore. This was about prison. Security, Isabelle said softly into her earpiece. And 2 men, in subtle dark suits, appeared at her side. Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Beaumont and their son out. Their presence is a liability. She used my father's own word against him. It was a beautiful, surgical strike. As they were being led away, their faces a mixture of disbelief and utter ruin. I stepped forward and held up a hand. The security guards paused. I walked over to Julian, whose entire body was trembling with a rage born of impotence. The world seemed to fall silent again. The crowd, holding its collective breath. I let him stand there, stewing in his public defeat, letting him process the totality of his ruin for one long, agonizing moment. Then, I leaned in close. My voice, a quiet whisper that only he could hear. By the way, Julian, the bank that holds the mortgage on your house, the one you're 3 months behind on. I let the question hang in the air, watching the last bit of color drain from his face as understanding dawned. I bought them last Tuesday. We need to talk about your payment plan. Then I turned to my father. His eyes were wide with a terror I had never seen before. He, the great Richard Beaumont, was finally afraid. The fraud investigation, I said, my voice still a whisper, but one that carried the weight of a guillotine. I control whether the evidence gets handed over. You will sign over your remaining shares in the family holding company, all 2% of them to me by 9 a.m. tomorrow. You will do it for $1. And then you will retire. Quietly. Or, Isabelle will make a phone call. Do you understand? He couldn't speak. He just gave a jerky, pathetic nod. The patriarch. Broken. I didn't stay to celebrate my victory. I didn't watch them get put into a taxi or bask in the shocked and admiring glances of the collectors. The sterile, silent gallery suddenly felt like a tomb. I walked out, got into my truck, and drove back to my sanctuary. My real gallery wasn't a place of white walls and polished concrete. It was a sprawling, converted warehouse that smelled of warm motor oil, hot metal, and ozone. It was a place of ordered chaos, of tools laid out with surgical precision, and blueprints spread across massive workbenches. This was where my art was born. My family worshipped static beauty. Things sealed behind glass cases and hung on walls. Their value determined by critics and auctioneers. My art was alive. It had a pulse, a guttural roar that could shake the windows. My art breathed fire and covered miles of open road. I picked up a wrench. Its familiar, satisfying heft, a comfort in my hand. I ran my fingers over the cool, curved steel of a gas tank. I was custom shaping for a client in Monaco. My family saw value in price tags. I found it in performance. In the perfect weld. In the flawless harmony of 1,000 moving parts working as one. They saw my grease-stained hands as a mark of failure. To me, they were the hands of a creator. Someone who built legacies, not just inherited them. The victory tonight wasn't in owning their world. It was the profound, soul-deep realization that I never needed their approval in the first place. Their judgment was a cage I had allowed myself to be kept in for far too long. Tonight, I hadn't just bought a gallery, I had bought my freedom. My hands, stained with the honest grime of hard work, had built a legacy far more real, far more powerful than any painting they could ever hang on a wall. And that was a masterpiece no one could ever take from me. Have you ever had to prove your worth to people who should have known it all along? Share your story in the comments below.